Hello all, I hope you had a great long weekend. Today we're going to start off the week by talking about solving inequalities and graphing them on a number line. Your homework's going to be from Chapter 2, Section 5. You've got 31 through 45 odd as recommended practice, and you got to get the presentation problem 36 in by the end of the week. So make sure you've got your notes materials ready to go on this page, and let's get started. So, solving inequalities, you'll notice that they look really similar to solving equations. Instead of 6x equals 36, we just have 6x is less than 36. And for the most part, you solve inequalities exactly like regular equations. You cancel out the numbers using the opposite operations and simplify, making sure you get the variable by itself. The only thing that's different is that if you end up with something like we see in number 2, where you are taking a negative and you're canceling out a negative with multiplication or division. So both of these have to be true. You're canceling a negative number with multiplication or division. Then you flip the inequality. And what I mean by flipping the inequality is that if I, for example, cancel out a negative on both sides by multiplying by -2, and it was a less than sign, I'm going to flip it and make it a greater than sign. This is a flipped inequality. Now, similarly, if we had something like, oh, it's greater than or equal to, when we flip that inequality, that would become a less than or equal to. So you'll still have that line down here. These are our 4 inequality signs that you will see in any inequality lesson. So let's look at this happening in an actual problem. As I said with number 1, you've got 6x is less than 36. We're going to solve this like we normally would. As I said, we divide our multiplication by 6. That's going to cancel, and we're left with x is less than. So you'll notice the sign stayed the same because we were dividing by a positive. 36 divided by 6 is 6. So my final answer is x is less than 6. Now, on the other hand here, in number 2, when we divide, we're canceling out a -6 on both sides. So -6x cancels, and we get just x by itself. But we cancel out a negative on both sides with division, right? Because remember, the operation is important here. So then the sign is going to change to a greater than. 36 divided by -6 is -6. Now, one thing that's nice if you're not sure what's happening is that here you'll notice it was positive on both sides and it stayed positive on both sides and nothing changed. Here we had a negative side, it's now positive. We had a positive side, it's now negative. So the inequality changes. So if the signs change on the problems, the sign changes in between them. So the sign changed here, the sign didn't change here. So that's a nice way to tell. Now, let's look at one that's a little bit more complicated, and we're also going to talk about graphing on a number line. So let's just start by solving. We've got -3a plus 17 is greater than or equal to 5. So just like we would if this was a regular equation, we're going to start by getting rid of the addition. So we'll subtract 17 on both sides. Now we're canceling out with addition and subtraction, so we're not going to flip. And we end up with -3a is greater than or equal to 5 minus 17. 5 minus 17 is going to be -12. And if you weren't sure, oh, do I flip the sign or not? You'll notice we had a -3a. It's staying negative over here. And so we're going to keep the sign exactly the way it's been going because we have the same. But now when we divide by our -3, both sides are negative. When we divide by that -3, -12 divided by -3 is +4. -3a divided by -3 is +a. So those both became positive from both being negative. And so we've now flipped the sign. And we have our answer, a is less than or equal to 4. Now we're also going to ask, once you've solved it, to graph. So once we have it solved, we're going to go through 3 steps to graph on a number line. So here's our number line, and I might start by putting in a couple of points. In this case, I'm going to put in 0 in the middle and a couple of more spaces there. So here we've got from -6 to +6, 0 in the center. So there's our number line, and the first thing you want to do is to draw the boundary. And that boundary is the answer of your solve problem. So in this case, it's 4. So we've got our point 4 right here in this case, or whatever the answer would be. Now the next thing is, you notice I haven't drawn a big point here. That's our next thing we're going to do. We're going to plot a point at the boundary, and there's 2 different types. We call these 2 types open, which is a point that has nothing filled in, or closed. And this is about if we want to include the boundary or not. So if we want to go up to that point 4 but not include it, you would use an open boundary, and that will involve the 2 symbols that are either greater than or less than. If it's a closed boundary, it means that we are including that number, and so that's where it has the or equal to. So in this case, A is less than or equal to 4, which means we want to include 4 in the problem. So we're going to draw a closed, filled-in circle here at 4. Now our last step is to shade part of the line. Now if we're shading part of the line, it's just asking, is the variable smaller than the boundary, or is the variable larger? If the variable is smaller, you want to shade over here. And if the variable is larger, you're going to shade towards the larger numbers. In this case, A is less than 4, so that means that this is the smaller term. We're thinking about things that are less than 4. If you want to think about it like an alligator mouth, that's just fine. So we're going to shade this part. I'm just using a different color so it's very obvious. You can also use just shade it in really darkly and boldly. And you've got your nice big closed boundary there. And this would be your final answer for the graph. There's another example if you want to see that on the guided notes in the PDF that's attached. Otherwise, you feel free to get started on 2.5 homework. If you've got any questions, please leave them in the comments, or you can make an appointment in the calendar. Have a great day. I'll talk to you later.